Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk quickly about the science of reading, and I'm going to talk about what it is, and I think that this might explain a little bit around why we're making changes at school with our literacy block from P to 2. And I think that once we know why we're making the changes and the science behind the changes, I think that we'll be better equipped to make changes in our classroom and when we're choosing activities and to plan what next for our kids. So today I'm doing it in a busy teacher-friendly way. So today it's going to be quick and simple, and I hope to give you all the fundamentals in around 20 minutes. So today my presentation is based on a PD that I did in the holidays. This is it here. There's a link to it in the comments. The whole thing goes for about an hour, and it's a little bit more in depth than what I'm doing today. Okay, so today I'm going to talk two parts. First of all, I'm going to really quickly talk about the reading brain and what research has shown us about the brain. And then secondly, I'm going to talk about the science of reading and explain how that all works through stories and pictures and in a bit of a fun way. All right, the reading brain. So when we learn to read, what we are essentially doing is mapping graphic symbols to spoken speech. Right, so that is really complex, especially in English. And just to give you an idea of what our students might be feeling when they're learning to read, here we go. We've got some symbols. Now, this is a very well-known children's book. And when you see this, you might think, oh, okay, I think I know some of these letters. I think I can work out what some of these words might be. But really, you're not sure exactly what it says. You haven't been taught this code yet. So this is probably what our students are feeling when we give them a text and they're first learning to read. And for those playing along at home, it is, of course, the very hungry caterpillar. So why is this process of learning to read so complex? Why is it so difficult? And the research tells us that our brain is not wired. It is not wired to understand a written code. So when we are presented with the symbols here, unless we are taught explicitly what they are, we can't work them out. Our brain won't naturally acquire the ability to work out what these symbols are. We have to be taught it. But what our brain is wired to do is to learn spoken language. So, this is why we start. This is so important because this is why we start all our reading journey with oral language, and you hear us talk about that all of the time. This is where our base lies. Okay, so when we look a little bit further into the brain and into the research behind the brain, scientists tell us that there are areas of our brain in the visual regions that we are born with to recognize objects and to recognize faces. But what we're not born with is the ability to recognize words or symbols. So what we have to do is we have to create this area in the brain. And us as teachers, we actually do this, which is so cool. So scientists call this little part of the brain, the green part that we can see here, the letterbox. And this part of the brain is to do with recognizing words. And when we have this, we can recognize words without too much effort. But what we know through science is that this little area does not exist when we're born, and it does not exist in people who cannot read. We also know that it takes years to build. It's not something that shows up instantly. So this is the part of the brain like I said, that we as teachers are concerned with developing. All right, so now I'm going to explain the science of reading. And this little animation that I've got happening here, this will make a little bit more sense after I have done this next section. Okay, so welcome to the land of the reading brain. So in this land, we have some different areas. This area here that we've got shown is the spoken language regions. And within this region, we've got two neighbourhoods or two cities. We have Sound City and we have Meaning Mountains. So Sound City is concerned with things like articulation, pronunciation, and Meaning Mountain is where we're making meaning from things that people have said to us. So you can see here when somebody says the word bat. Oh, okay, over in Meaning Mountain, I know what a bat is. It's the thing that we hit the ball with. Now you can see there's a little green bridge in between the two cities, and that shows us that both Sound City and Meaning Mountain are very closely related. Now they are so closely related, in fact, that when you're in Sound City and you make one tiny change, so instead of saying bat and you say cat, you change one little sound, you can completely change what happens in Meaning Mountains. So it's important to remember that. Okay, now we have another little area in the brain over here in vision villages. Now this area of the brain already has some little spots that are for recognizing objects and for recognizing faces, like we spoke about before, but what it doesn't have is an area for recognizing symbols. So there are no links at all between Vision Villages and Sound City or Meaning Mountains. So no link between Vision Villages and the spoken language regions. So what we have to do is create a connection between Vision Villages and the spoken language regions. So how do we do that? This is where our role as teachers come in. Okay, so number one, the very first thing that we need to do is the phonological awareness. We have to develop their oral perceiving and playing with speech in sounds. And this is where our Hegedy lies. And this is why Hegedy has been a fundamental part of our literacy program for many years now, because we know that this is where we have to start. This is where the foundations are for learning to read. All right, so number two, the next thing that we have to do is we have to recognize letters. So what we actually have to do is we need to retrain the neurons in that part of the brain that usually are there for recognizing objects and faces, and we have to retrain them to recognize symbols. So this is where we're introducing each letter at a time. And once we do that, once we teach them teach them to map these letters, we can actually get them to move it over to Sound City. So we teach them these are the letters and these are the sounds that they make. And what we actually do is we create a bridge from Vision Villages over to Sound City. And you can see here that the little vision neurons are communicating with the auditory neurons. And the auditory neurons are thinking, oh, okay, so when I see like a line and then a circle over there, oh, okay, that's a b. And what's so cool about this process is that the brain is not built to do this. This will not naturally happen in the brain. We, as teachers, help to create this pathway from Vision Villages over to Sound City. Now, once we've created this initial path over into Sound City, we then have to teach our students to blend those sounds together. That's the next step. And I know that we have a lot of students at our school who have difficulty with blending, and I know I've had lots of conversations with people around students in their class They know all the letters, they know the sounds, but when it comes to blending, they're having difficulty. And I'd love to talk about blending more, but I think that that's probably for another day. But it's just important to know that that's our next step. Now, after we've taught them how to blend the sounds together, so b, at, bat, bat, we can then move through, and you can see that our purple bridge there is extending. We can then move over to meaning mountains. And when we blend the sounds together to at, bat, okay, I know what a bat is. It's the thing that we hit the ball with, or it's the thing that flies around in the sky. And what we have created, you can see here, is called the phonological route. This purple bridge that goes from Vision Villages through Sound City to Meaning Mountain is called our phonological route, and the technical term is the phonological processor. But this is the route that we take in our brain in order to learn to read. All right, and so the next stage, after we have, learned all the individual sounds and learned how to blend them together in order to make meaning, we start to introduce them then to the different words. And of course, we start with our CVC words, our consonant, vowel, consonant words, because they're the most basic. And we then build up. So you can see here on our little phonological route, we've got little boats with a couple of little neurons. And this is where our phonics scope and sequence comes into play. So this is where we are really talking about introducing the different sounds and the different complexities. So we move obviously from CVC onto CCVC, CVCC, we move into our diagraphs, our vowel diagraphs, all of those sorts of things. And what we're doing is we're slowly building up our ability to read larger units of letters. And we're still taking that phonological route to do it. So something that's really important for us to remember is that just because we teach them the sounds of the letters and we teach them how to blend, they don't just then automatically know how to read. What's important is that we're taking a systematic approach to introducing and creating more complex units of letters. And that's, like I said, what our scope and sequence does. Okay, so also what we have to do at this stage is we also have to travel back the other way. And I want to talk a little bit about the process of writing. So what we do when we're writing is we obviously start from meaning mountains. We think about what we want to say, and then we travel to Sound City and we break it up or segment the word that we want to say into its sounds, and then we travel over to Vision Villages and we get it onto paper as letters. And as we travel backwards and forwards across our phonological route, we're actually strengthening it as we go. And I just want to talk just quickly about that for a second. And Carolyn in her presentation talks a little bit about this research, and I thought that it was really important that I too mentioned it, only because we've introduced in the last couple of years our Casey Caterpillar, and I think that it's important that we know that this is such an important step in our learning to read process. So in this piece of research, there were 3 groups of non-readers, children who couldn't read, and they were to learn 12 letters. Now, the 3 groups were a handwriting group, a typing group, and a tracing group. And then each group underwent some MRI scanning. And what the results showed was that the reading circuit in the brain was only activated on those MRI scans in the handwriting group. So that tells us that when we practice writing those letters as we're learning them, that actually enhances our ability to remember them and to learn them. So I think this is so important for us because we've got our Casey caterpillar, and as we're introducing our letters or even our diagraphs, it's so important that we're getting the children to write them as well, and not overlook that part of our program because it is so important. All right, so what we're doing is we're traveling, we're reading, so we're going from Vision Villages, Sound City to Meaning Mountains, and then when we're writing, Meaning Mountains, Sound City to Vision Villages, and we're strengthening that phonological root. And as we do that, something really cool happens. This letterbox lookout in Vision Villages appears. Now, this little lookout is a specialized area, and what happens in there is that words are stored. And they're stored for instant recall. So the technical term for this, is the orthographic mapping, and you've probably heard me say that before. So in here, we store those words so that we don't have to go via the Sound City. We can just access them instantly. And what happens is that you can see here there's a little orange bridge starting to form between Vision Villages and Meaning Mountains. And this is called our lexical route. And that is our fast track to meaning. And that's what we can use to help us read more automatically. And as we continue to read, you can see our letterbox lookout is growing even bigger. Our lexical route is activated, and we start to get more and more words in our letterbox lookout that we can just recall instantly. So now what we have are two routes for reading. We have the phonological route through Sound City, and we have the lexical route, a fast track straight from Vision Villages to Meaning Mountain. Now, when we're at this stage here, children are anywhere between 6 and 8. And I think that really emphasizes how important our job in lower school is. Look at how much their brain has developed and changed in the short period of time that we have them. So when we're at this stage, we are starting to work with multiple syllabic words. We're starting to read more automatically, and we don't always have to take the phonological route to work out our words. We can take the lexical route as well. And over time, you can see here that our lexical route strengthens and becomes thicker, and our letterbox lookout becomes larger and stores a lot more words. And eventually, like us as adults, we store thousands of words in our letterbox lookout that we can recall instantly within, milliseconds. So this is where obviously we want to be, and this is where we want our children to be when they're reading more automatically. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And from then on, more often than not, they'll start to take the lexical route because they're storing more and more words. But of course, sometimes they'll still have to take the phonological route. Just like us as adults, sometimes we have to, break up a word into its syllables to work out what it means. Okay, so we'll just quickly go over a summary of what I've talked about today. So we first of all start with our spoken language regions of the brain. That's what we're born with. And then we move into the phonological route and developing the phonological route from Vision Villages through Sound City to Meaning Mountains. And then we start to introduce harder words and words with more letters. And as we do that, our letterbox lookout starts to develop. And then finally, our lexical route is formed. And at this point, we're starting to look at multiple syllabic words, and we are reading a lot more automatically. All right, so there's sort of our 4 main stages in the science of reading. And that's pretty much it. So here's our little animation. So here we are, our spoken language regions, which are very closely linked. And then we have our Vision Villages. And then we develop our phonological root, and then our letterbox lookout pops up, and then our lexical root, finally. Okay, so just to finish up, there's a little link in the email that I sent you. It'll take you like 30 seconds to do. There's just some ideas of some PD that you might like to look more into. If you just want to check which one you think you could be interested in, and just give me just a tiny bit of feedback about this presentation, that would be very helpful. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you later.